for joining us.
It's good to be with you, Lynn.
Yeah. Hilary, you've been here before and given us a synopsis of your life, so we might not have to go quite there again. And you and I ran for the Senate
Yes, we did.
from the county, and we had a good time doing that. And we wanted to talk today a little bit about what's going on in Montpelier.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest piece that's going on, well, there's two big pieces, but the biggest piece we want to talk about today is the health care bill. Is called Green Mountain Care, H202, House Bill 202.
S57. Right.
Now it says 57 because it's in the Senate.
That's, well, they name it for both. H202/S57.
Yeah. Now I have downloaded and read this bill and tried to get around it, and my first impression is interesting, but what is your first impression of this bill?
Well, my first impression, I'm for single payer. I'm for universal access in whatever form it takes, but certainly I do see the merit in single payer. But that means it has to work. It has to be based on sound economic values. It has to be within, like any budgeted piece of legislation, it has to be within where they make ends meet. And that's absent in this bill.
Don't you think, knowing that we've talked about single payer for a long time, Richard Davis has been leading the charge, as well as there's a whole group, that they have never squared the corner on how you're going to pay for it.
Right.
That's their biggest stumbling block.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that still might be the case.
Yeah, that is the case. I mean, this bill doesn't dance around it. I think it really, by design, avoids it. How it's going to be paid for, and it does defer that obligation, as far as I can see, to a appointed board. And you know, some of that is okay, but to the extreme that and scope that this bill represents is I mean, we're talking, and this is based on Act 128. This is their numbers, not mine. If everything, Act 128 was that was last year's bill that enabled Dr. Shao to design the health plan that, for a large part, is the basis for H202.
Now I understand this Dr. Shao. He's a Harvard professor or doctor or something.
Health economist, yes.
Health economist. Oh, okay.
That's right.
And his initial presentation, I understand, to the legislature was that you need a population of 1 million people to make it even begin to work, to have that much of a thing. And we only have 600,000, so right away, to me, a red flag goes up.
Yeah, I don't have that kind of concern about the numbers. I think 600,000 people is sufficient number to make any kind of universal access to healthcare system work. It's not in the numbers of the population, it's in the quality of the population that really drives a successful healthcare plan, whether it's 1,000 people or 600,000 people.
What criteria are in the quality that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, when we talk about the quality of a healthcare population, we're talking about things that certainly preventive care is part of that, but even more so nutrition and exercise and things that even are before a preventive care regimen.
So you're talking about healthy lifestyle.
That's right. Ownership of one's own choices that people make about lifestyle.
And do you think that Vermont, where does Vermont fit, not in your opinion, but in how insurance actuaries look at a population? How does Vermont fit in there? Are we superior in our health?
Typically, I think Vermont, compared to the other 49, yes, we are successful. For the most part, plans that have a large group population are going to have better health risks in their employee population than a plan that is, well, in this case, for instance, comparing it to the small group health insurance market, there's not the incentives to have um, to encourage or incent healthy lifestyles like there is with large group employer populations.
So a large group has more ability to influence people to live healthy
That's
than a small
right.
group.
But typically, that is correct.
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
You would think a small group would be more inclusive.
Well,
as far as you have to be basically maybe a non-smoker, a moderate to non-drinker. You have to exercise so many times a week. You have to prove that you can do these things in a small group. Or is that not how it works?
no, it's not how it works.
Okay.
When I refer to a small group population, I'm talking about the aggregate in Vermont of all the small groups put together. But there really isn't, in this case, any real coordinated ability to have a coordinated effort to incent people other than preventive care, which is
It's
we're
not
finding is only of marginal utility.
Yeah, it's been touted as a big silver bullet kind of thing.
That's right.
But I think now they're saying that it's not showing promise.
There are studies that peer-reviewed studies that show that it is not as effective as we were not only thinking but hoping it would be. Sure.
This whole health plan strikes me, having read it, as it's putting in place an ideal, a utopia of we're going to take care of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And this board you talked about, the power that it has is a soups to nuts kind of power. They're going to recruit doctors and train them, and nurses and train them. They're going to help each of us select our own, what's the best policy for us. They're going to manage the hospitals, negotiate with drug prices with companies. It's a board of 5 people, remember? The scope of powers is, they're also going to decide what they're going to pay for and how much they're going to pay for it, and basically maybe do bulk orderings with all the hospitals in the state. I don't know how that's going to work. But that kind of oversight always, it's sort of a progressive idea that a small group of people can make all these big decisions, and yet they somehow always seem to leave things out.
Right.
Because it's almost a philosophy against whether you have a centralized power with total control over the society, or you have individuals making their own decisions.
Mm-hmm. I'm always up for ideals, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm always think that we ought to reach for the sky and try to achieve the most we can. But let's take health out of this for a second.
Okay.
This bill, if I had been elected to the state senate and a bill of certainly of this size, but pretty much any kind of legislation, I want to know how much it's going to cost, because in the broad scope of things, when something certainly this massive is introduced, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers in the overall budget of the state of Vermont for 2011 or 2012, whenever. There's going to be winners and losers, and to have our legislators choose what they're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
but in fact not choose is, I don't think, what they're supposed to do. They're the ones we have put into office to make these very difficult decisions and to kick the can down the road
To the
board who is appointed, to me, is an abdication of their responsibilities and duties. And if I had been elected,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's healthcare or whether it's transportation or whatever the issue is, I just in good conscience could not vote for something that I didn't know what the cost was going to be, or have or at least I certainly wouldn't avoid trying the responsibility of demanding that we know what the costs are.
Well, the legislature's following a pattern they started 2 years ago when the state started accumulating, the economy started going sour. They accumulated this debt, and they did not make the cuts themselves. They asked agencies to make the cuts and choose where they could best cut. So this has sort of been an established mode, and so now they have said, what you're saying is this board is going to be in charge of making decisions on what things are covered, what aren't, how much they're going to pay for them, and the legislature will have clean hands.
Yeah, it sure is a tidy way of doing things. Remember, Lynn, this is the same team that 2 years ago overrode a governor's budget and veto and added 25 million to a budget only to have to take it back the start of the session following. If there was ever a bill that required fiscal restraint, fiscal discipline,
and even knowledge. How many? They don't have to even know what's
this
going
is
on.
it. Yeah, and again, I want to see single payer work, but unless you take command of the costs, unless you take command of the legislation, I don't see how it can succeed. This is the part that concerns me the most, and really is, I'm astonished.
Mm-hmm. Well, another piece of astonishment to add to it, these cost things, is the pay part thing. Who's going to pay for it, and how is it going to be paid for it? Because the costs undoubtedly, I think, are going to go up. Because this is going to be a huge expansion of state government, which is going to be huge increase people on the payroll to make all this thing work, just administratively. And to keep tabs on all of us, because there's criteria we have to meet. You have to have your health care must be received in a satisfactory way, in a timely way, and you have to be very happy with how you've been treated, the whole thing. And they're going to keep track of all this stuff, which means that's people to keep track of it.
They're going to hire 10 or 12 people from Vishka to come over to work as staff for the board.
Is Vishka what's Vishka?
Vishka is the Department of Banking, Insurance, Securities, and Healthcare Administration. And one of the tenets of this bill, or one of the goals of this bill, is that they will also be managing the Medicare population, the Medicaid population. They're going to be managing all the population that's currently in private health care. And they're going to do it with 12 people, plus 5 board members. Sure, there's going to be help from contractors like Blue Cross Blue Shield or whoever else they hire to do some of this. But
so we aren't getting rid of the Blue Cross Blue Shield expenses.
Well, we're going. I'm sure they'll be readjusted. But right, there's going to be a need for staff and customer service, that sort of thing. Part of the idea, though, with this is that there's only going to be one plan, 2 plans. There'll be a single payer. There might be a couple pools of risk out there. There might be more than just one, or at least they allow the chance of that happening in this bill. So,
well, we had a little dabble into this with Catamount Health, which to me, I think they've dumped it. We have spent millions. They spent millions of dollars trying to get people on the plan.
Right.
It was to pick up the people who didn't qualify for Medicaid but couldn't afford private insurance. And so now those people have been saying they'll all be thrown. Shumlin has said he wants to put all those people under Medicaid.
Right.
However, Medicaid rules for qualifications, these people make too much money for it. So they're basically without insurance at all, I think, right now, or something's going on.
The Catamount experiment was doomed.
Well,
from the get-go.
It's doomed, but is this one any different? Are we going to just spend a lot of money trying to put a program that's going to
let me tell you
Different.
some of the things that concern people
Okay.
about what happened to Catamount, which could possibly happen to this. One is you have a lot of different employers in the state, and there's three large employers. There's IBM with 3,000 employees. There's GE with in Rutland with just about that many, and then you have Entergy, who has 600 or so employees, as long as the plant continues operation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have plans that are large, very large group. They're, you know, take IBM for instance. They have 3,000 employees or so in Vermont. In the U.S., they have 105,000 employees. So this represents less than 3% of their population that they have to insure. And there's no they already have built into their costs, and these are high fixed cost type plans where it won't cost them much more money whether or not the 3,000 people are being insured up in Williston, but they'll be really they will not take kindly to the idea that not only will they continue insuring their employees in Williston, but they're also going to have to pay a payroll tax on top of that.
So they're going to have to insure them twice.
Yeah, well, that's what
Or
some
double.
people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is what will end up happening is that those people who work for IBM will not be insured through Green Mountain Care.
Okay. And
So will GE, so will Entergy. And then you take smaller groups like employers with 250. They're not going to embrace this either. And if they do, it is only because it will be cheaper for them, for their employees to acquire, or for the cost through the payroll tax. If it's cheaper, yeah, they'll go with the Green Mountain Care. But if it's not cheaper, they won't. But if they're made to do so, that will just be an additional cost of doing business in Vermont.
if they're made to do so, basically they're made to pay for two policies for
Well,
one employee.
or the fact is that they will have to pay, either they'll continue with what they're doing, or they will be, in the way I read the legislation right now,
Mm-hmm.
is that they would be forced to pay additional, pay the.
So you can
the freight.
join or you pay a penalty. So
That's right. Yeah.
So you,
Small employers, I hope, will pay less.
but see, this to me shows the whole thing. If the goal is that everyone has insurance and therefore has health care paid by a third party usually, why does the state care whether employers provide it this way? Why is the state trying to force everyone that they either, I mean, they're already paying it for your employer, and now you're going to be penalized because you haven't bought insurance from the state.
We shouldn't really care too much about where people acquire health
But,
coverage,
you know,
as long as they
do.
have health coverage.
But you know, let me just tell you, I interviewed Richard Davis, sat in his chair with you, you know, where you're sitting now, and I said the same scenario. I said, if our goal is to provide health care and health insurance is reasonably priced enough that everybody can afford it, would you be happy with that? No. He wants the state to control it. That's
Well,
the goal.
That's his take. I know there are many people in Windham County who are very concerned that a single payer is not going to afford benefits for much of the services that they consider important to them, whether it's in homeopathic, naturopathic.
Well, those have already been thrown under the bus. under this
Just
legislation.
people are very concerned about that.
I think
And
chiropractic is not listed either. That's been thrown under the bus. And I didn't, when reading the bill, I didn't see one word about physical therapy.
mhm.
They're doing evidence-based medicine only. So that allows you to really, again, they're gonna pick and choose
Yeah,
what they'll pay for.
I see the merit in evidence-based medicine, but only, that is good for healthcare policy, but that doesn't mean it's gonna work for everybody. Before we went on the air, we were talking about the perils of MSG and how its relationship to obesity. This morning, I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about yellow dye and red dye as being something they're finding out or suspecting that it's not good for you. I don't need years of peer review studies to decide whether or not I want to be consuming red dye, yellow dye, or MSG.
But what you just said is you would take personal responsibility for some of those things.
Right.
But what this Health Green Mountain Care is, the state will decide and encourage all that stuff.
And again, there are many people in Windham County, because I'm involved with this population, with this group, that we are very concerned that that the legislation that's being proposed and the train that's leaving the station is not going to consider many of the things that many people in Windham County consider very important to their health and to the ownership of their health and well-being.
The state has, over the years, mandated many things that insurance companies must cover. They mandated, you could probably fill in for me, birth control pills, and the cost of our house insurance went up 15%.
Mm-hmm.
They have mandated colonoscopies, which is also driven the price of insurance up, and several other health procedures. And now in this bill, they're giving themselves the power to review if this plan that we will have be our only access, will even cover those expenses.
Mm.
Which means that those things were put in there because they were deemed costly, or they wanted to encourage people to have access to these procedures, and now the state's going to review whether they will continue to be able to pay for it.
They'll leave it up to a board to make those kinds of decisions about benefits. And and to me, sometimes I think it's a question or a situation of be careful what you wish for, because it might come true. Because here you have advocates, activists who have been very vocal about promoting single payer, and pretty much at the end of this legislative session, in theory, they're all got to go find new jobs, because this board is going to take the activists out of the equation.
Well, I think that it seems like they never find something they can't start complaining about or bringing to our attention that we need to address. Let's talk about, you say they're going to have to lose their jobs. This board, this is the place to apply for a good job.
Yeah.
It's $160,000 salary and benefits for the chair,
Mm-hmm.
$101,000 salary and benefits for all the members.
I'm polishing up my resume as we speak.
It's straight. I'm sure it's going to be a very responsible job, but still, that's not peanuts as far as what the average person makes in Vermont.
That's right.
Let's talk, while we have a few more minutes, about ideas thrown out of how they're going to pay for it. None of these things are settled, even though the bill has been passed.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they all get settled later by this board. But the big thing I hear going on is that it's going to be on the back of the payroll tax.
That's right.
And if that is the case, then only those who are working and get a job, receive a paycheck, will pay for this. People who don't work, people who come in on a trust fund or have family money and therefore don't have to work, will have access to free health care. or will not contribute to the system.
I think the way it reads right now, I can't believe that they will give a free pass to those folks who file Schedule Ds and have no other source of income or have.
But that's what this bill that the House,
Currently
our
it
House
does.
passed. That's what it does.
Yeah, and that's why we want it to be in the Senate, Lynn, because that's where I think a lot of the rational things, adjustments are made. If they give a free pass to the folks who file Schedule Ds, passive income, what we will see
The mass exodus of jobs.
mass exodus of jobs and bumper to bumper traffic heading north for people who want free health insurance.
But we already give people the same pass, the Schedule D filers, the same pass on our property insurance. Our property tax. In that they qualify for property tax rebates to help them with their health insurance. With their property tax. I'm getting mixed up here. Even though they have money in the bank and could pay their property tax, we are subsidizing as a state. It's our pattern. Property owners who have this passive income,
Who have the means.
And who have means to pay it. And it's the property tax people who don't qualify are basically almost your young people who are trying, two people working, raising a family, and they have to pay the full boat, as well as those who are working full time. This influences people's decisions.
Of course it does. There are reasons why people come to settle in Vermont.
You come in to take advantage of it, or you leave because it's too onerous.
That's right.
Or
which is the same case in every other state. There are reasons why people move into a state and reasons why people leave.
Okay.
We have our own set of parameters.
Okay. Well, at that point, we'll have to end our conversation. But this has been a good start to hopefully get people talking about what's coming down the pipe.
I hope so.
Yeah, and that's what's needed. Is we need to talk about it and understand what the ramifications are. Thank you, Hilary.
It's good to be with you, Lynn.
Yeah, and we thank you for watching. You've been watching Neighbor to Neighbor. My name is Lynn Corum, and I've been here with Hilary Cooke, and we'll see you on our next show.